Hi everybody, welcome to Inside Practice. We're joined today by Ian Shea, CEO at I Am Human and a key speaker at our next event, Legal Wellbeing in New York. Welcome Ian, would you like to give a bit of an introduction about yourself and your experience?
Yeah, thank you very much, Rebecca. Again, my name is Ian Shea and I'm the founder and CEO of I Am Human. We work with organizations to help them better understand the impact culture has on their people. We work with organizations to help them design world-class well-being strategies. And we worked with law firms such as O'Melveny & Myers, Nixon Peabody, Goodwin Procter. So we have a lot of background in this space, and I'm very excited to share more.
Excellent. Good to have you on board. So you're hosting a session at our next event in New York, and your session is covering fostering a culture of wellbeing in law firms. So I'd love to ask you, with multiple generations of lawyers in today's firms, how can leaders create a culture of wellbeing that works for everyone, despite different expectations and work-life balances?
Well, one of the things we found in working with our clients is that law is a sense of purpose and there's a sense of calling for it. So all people who enter into law know that there's rigor, there's complexities, there are challenges, and they're drawn to that. So they're drawn to working hard. And I think what law firms can do is just create space for people to share what their expectations are in terms of how a work week will look like. So for example, working with one of our clients, they said every time they enter into a new case or enter into a new project, they gather everyone around and just set expectations as to what people are looking for, from the senior partner all the way down to associates, just to share these are some of the things that we expect as we enter to the next months of our case. And if there's any objections or if there's anything you would like to talk about in terms of shifting that, we are open. So effectively, that's creating a space just for people to share, what are the expectations? And if there's any pushback to those expectations, we're here to have a dialogue about that.
Brilliant. And how, in a diverse political climate, how can law firm leaders keep their culture supportive and cohesive so that outside stressors don't erode employees' well-being on the job?
Well, one of the things we found, especially over the last couple of months in this time of uncertainty and fear, is there may not be a solution for it right away, but we have been brought in. Again, it's around creating that space just to acknowledge that these are turbulent times right now. There is a lot of uncertainty. There is a lot of fear. And while we do have benefits, resources for people to tap into to support themselves, really what we have found people are looking for is just, again, that space to share, how is uncertainty impacting you? How is fear impacting you? How is it impacting your workload? Maybe your workload has dried up or maybe your workload is completely overwhelming. So to the extent you can just create spaces for acknowledging it, spaces for people to be heard and people to be seen, a lot of times that's almost 80% of solving for some of those uncertainties related to the turbulent times. So again, I think it's back to creating spaces, being a bit vulnerable. Maybe a partner can create an opportunity for he or her to share how it's impacting them, which gives permission for others to feel the weight of what's going on right now. Working with one of our clients, O'Melveny & Myers, and during our tenure, when we work with them, we were able to help them win the #1 well-being program in the legal industry, not once, but twice, and also the prestigious Salus Award from One Mind at Work. What we did was we created a program called Life Moments. And what that was is it would create an opportunity. We created space for people to share some of the life moments that they were going through, which we all are. That could be caring for an elderly parent. It could be maybe a recent diagnosis in the family that's causing a lot of fear. It could be these uncertain times politically that's really causing unrest. So we created an opportunity for people to share and come together what their life moments that they were experiencing. And what that did was two things. One, it opened up the space to humanize the culture and the environment, and also began to build a lexicon as to how people were thinking about their own well-being and what were the words that they were using. From that, we went on to a phase of calibrating what well-being means to the people within the firm. A lot of times people aren't asked, what does well-being mean to you? How are you taking care of yourself? And one of the things we've learned is that sometimes people aren't where they want to be in their well-being journey. Maybe they're not taking care of themselves as best as they want to be. And there's an opportunity there to create that space for people to not feel alone in that. So after we've calibrated where people are in their well-being, how they're taking care of themselves from a well-being perspective, we then ask them to imagine and to dream, how could our culture grow and expand over the next year? What are one or two things that you'd like to be behind in the next year or two that made our culture even richer, even more supportive of the mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being of our people? And I guess one of the biggest wins through that, in addition to winning the #1 well-being program, was there was an individual who through that work shared, this was on a Friday, on a Monday when she came back from the weekend, shared to the leadership team that her and her family were not in the best spot and they needed to have a difficult conversation. And through the work that the firm did, that Melviny did, she had more confidence in an ability to have that conversation over the weekend. She came back to work on Monday and was in a much better spot. Her family was in a much better spot, and she was in a much better spot in terms of coming back to work because of the gift that that firm had given to her. So those are some of the intangibles where, she was spreading the word to others within the organization and how culturally supportive the firm was. That she was more loyal, and she was in fact more productive because of that. So again, it comes back to coming up with, especially in these times, really thinking about what are innovative ways that you can create to take care of your people. And there are a lot of them, but it's a lot of times you have to allow people to share what they're looking for, because they'll tell you the answers and they'll tell you what those innovative ways are.
Yeah, definitely. And it sounds like there's a great return on investment for leadership as well, in order to put that guidance in place and that support.
Yes. And from a return on investment perspective, it's in a different industry, but I'll just share something whereby there was an industry in the behavioral health space, and I know it's not law, but I think it's similar from an ROI perspective, where they had an employee of the year. And every year they would award an individual the employee of the year. And in this instance, they would pay for a lease of a car for the upcoming year. Now, in that case, if you were just to assume a lease of a car is about $2,000 a month, which is quite rich, times 12, that's $24,000. So that'd be the investment that you made in that particular person. And in this case, that return was over $120,000 based on that business model. So that's a 5x return. In the legal world, there are many of those in terms of an ROI. A simple ROI could be training for leadership around acknowledging and recognizing the performance of the associates in the firm. And we have heard this, and our data shows that just an acknowledgement of, thank you for getting this case over the hump. I know you've worked hard through the weekend. I know you've worked hard through a holiday period, and your input really was valuable and it mattered. We have data that shows that when associates receive that feedback and feel that their work is seen, it's important, it's valuable, they give a little extra. So there's something called discretionary performance, which we all have. And to the extent you can tap into the discretionary performance, especially of associates, and maybe expand it 2 percentage points, 5 percentage points, 10 percentage points, your return on investment there is astronomical in terms of your client satisfaction.
Definitely. And it's definitely a benefit.
100%. And not only that, that's on the client development side. On the retention side, it's even greater, because as you start to look through some of the exit interviews when people leave and why did they leave, think about how many people leave for culture reasons or emotional well-being reasons. And if you were just to keep one of those associates, I believe the data shows that it's a savings of $500,000 for an associate in his or her 6th or 7th year. So the ROI for any of these initiatives will not come near $500,000, $600,000, $700,000. So just keeping one would pay for itself.
Oh, that's really insightful information, and definitely something that people benefit from. That's fantastic.
For sure.
Brilliant. So obviously you're a speaker at our event in New York, which is coming up really, really soon. I'd love to know, what are you personally most excited to discuss at without too many spoilers? And what do you hope attendees, whatever their job title may be, what do you hope they'll take away from your session and that conversation?
Well, I'm excited about a lot of things, but if I were just to boil it down, I'm excited about two or three things. One of which we just talked about some of the innovative ways firms can, how firms can approach taking care of their people. I'm excited to share some of those. And I'm also excited to hear from the attendees what they're doing. So maybe we could put together a library of different ideas, right, that people can take back to their firms. I think number two, I'm excited for people who are firms that are in the beginning of kind of their well-being journey, of building out their well-being strategic plan. I'm excited to give them some confidence, give them some step-by-step suggestions that they can do right when they leave, the conference. For example, just writing up a simple email that you could send out to the entire firm that you attended the conference. And here are some of the takeaways. And we are really excited as a firm to continue to continue to build out our culture. That would be one example. And then the last, which I'm probably most excited about, is the financial benefits. And we touched on this a little bit in this conversation, but what I'm even more excited about is to dive more deeply into that particular subject matter and talk about the ROI, talk about retention, talk about client development, client stickiness, talk about productivity and performance, and really try and synthesize 2 or 3 big ROI metrics such that the attendees can really understand how financially beneficial this is to the overall firm's performance year in and year out.
Fantastic. It's really exciting, and it's going to be a great day.
Can't wait. I can't wait, and I'm excited to see everybody there.
Definitely. Well, brilliant. Well, thank you so much for speaking with me today, Ian. And for people who want to attend Legal Wellbeing, there'll be a link below. And thanks very much for watching.
Perfect. Can't wait. See you in a couple weeks.